It feels to me like there's a certain recipe for your game to be automatically terrible. That recipe is to have 3D come after the name of your game. It's like saying that the only thing cool about your game is that it's in 3D. There are companies and products with 3D in their name like Nintendo 3DS and 3DO, and there's nothing wrong with those.
3DO.
There are also games with 3D before the name of the game, and that sounds a whole lot better than with it after the name. For example, you have the game Chess, then you have 3D Chess. Still sounds normal. Nothing wrong here. Then you have Chess 3D. And it just sounds wrong. It's like they're trying too hard to be cool. But it's not. And that's exactly the case with Bubsy 3D. Accolade Incorporated was founded in 1984 by Alan Miller and Bob Whitehead, which also co-founded Activision in 1979. Both men prior to all that had worked for Atari in developing Atari 2600 games, though soon after Accolade's founding, Bob left the company, and in 1994, Alan left as well. Before Alan left, however, 2 games from one of Accolade's most notorious franchises was released, Bubsy in Claws Encounters of the Furred Kind, and Bubsy II. Claws Encounters of the Furred Kind, also known as Bubsy, was released in 1993 for the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo. It seemed like what Accolade was going for here was a 2D platformer to rival the likes of Sega's Sonic and Nintendo's Mario, with its main character, Bubsy, as the company's mascot. It certainly seemed like Sonic played a large part in what references they used to base the first Bubsy game on. I say that because the two seem so similar. Bubsy runs fast, Sonic runs fast. Bubsy dies in one hit, no matter what. Sonic died only when you get hit with 0 rings. Bubsy takes fall damage? Wait, what? Yes, fall damage, in a 2D platformer. Some things can be excused, but not that. But then there's Bubsy II. Again referencing Sonic, Sonic games have lore to them, no matter how messed up that lore has gotten over the years. But Bubsy II has nothing to compare it to its first game other than the sprite of Bubsy being there. It's like they repurposed the game like Nintendo did with Super Mario Bros. 2. And Accolade just stuck Bubsy's sprite in there and called it good. They fixed some of the issues with the first game, like no more fall damage, which shouldn't have been a problem in the first place, and no more one hit and you're dead, but that didn't make it much better. And I still don't understand why Bubsy glides. I mean, I get Sonic being fast because hedgehogs can move kinda quickly, but bobcats don't glide. Honestly though, I have a lot of negative things to bring up about Bubsy 2, just as I did with the first game, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about an even worse Bubsy game. The worst. Bubsy 3D. By this point, both of the original founders of Accolade had left the company. It's a good thing they did too. Maybe them not being there was what led to this point. But I'd like to think that they saw into the future, and after seeing the monstrosity, they got out when they could. You see, in 1996, the boom of 3D video games was in full swing, and Accolade with their shelf-clearing Bubsy games had to transition their mascot to the 3D scene. It's not that the technology was bad in 1996. I mean, there was Crash Bandicoot, released in September of 1996, with its smooth controls despite the DualShock controller not being created for another 2 years, and such beautiful graphics and landscapes. Then you have Tomb Raider, released in October 1996. I would personally say maybe not as aesthetically pleasing, but still with great controls and a great story which spawned countless subsequent games and movies. There was Nintendo's Super Mario 64, released in June of 1996. Of course it was beautiful. I mean, it was a Mario game in its prime. Then you have Bubsy 3D, released on October 31st, 1996, just after Tomb Raider. I mean, Bubsy 3D was awarded with PS Extreme Magazine's Gold X Award, plopped right on the front cover, so it must be good. When you first open Bubsy 3D, there was a cutscene telling you the reason for Bubsy being there. At least, they fixed the problem of going in blind from Bubsy 2. Though during cutscenes in video games, the graphics tend to look better than the actual gameplay, unless the cutscene involves the actual character models. In Bubsy 3D, even though the cutscene does look better than the actual gameplay, I would say that it still looks worse than any of the previously mentioned games' gameplay graphics released in the same year as Bubsy 3D. Putting the graphics and the almost inaudible dialogue aside, what I gathered was that Bubsy was captured by the Woolies, the first enemy you see in the first Bubsy game, broke free, and has to collect rocket parts in order to build a rocket to escape their planet. The majority of the items you collect, though, are actually atoms, and they also double as being weapons, besides jumping on your enemies. So if you collect an atom, instead of using as a weapon near a wall that can be destroyed, then you either have to forget about exploring that area, find another way around, or just restart the level. Convenient. Besides the woolies, the other enemies in the game are Zots, Dogfish. It's pretty much all woolies. There are 36 levels, each one with its own unique... I seriously can't say anything about this game without it being negative. I'm just gonna jump to all the cons so I can get those out of the way. Probably the most notable part of Bubsy 3D, besides the graphics, is the dialogue of Bubsy, which they kept since the first game. I'm of course talking about the countless puns. Bubsy 3D has more puns than Conker's Bad Fur Day has mature content. Except Conker's Bad Fur Day is actually a good game. Here are some of those puns.
Oh, where's my bowling ball? Dynamite! Take me to your leader! You hairball! Now, what would a platform game be without platforms?
Speaking of platforms, those untextured floating blocks, what is up with the camera when jumping? I'm surprised I was able to navigate to each platform without being able to see the next one right in front of me. This of course goes hand in hand with my next complaint, the controls. Just like the aforementioned games released in the same year, missing the joysticks of the DualShock, the controls of all of them felt pretty smooth. But as you can probably guess what I'm about to say, Bubsy 3D's controls were pretty bad. The turning was the biggest negative factor. It was so clunky and the sensitivity felt really off. And it was very easy to pass by the place I needed to go, even when holding down left or right to turn. And then I had to stop in place and turn. And why couldn't they have just let him walk straight backwards? Why does he have to jump? After following the arrows they are so proud of including, I made it to the end of the level. So, let's move on to the next one. It's the same thing. Basically the same map, with the same puzzles, with the same objective, with the same enemies, just with different colors. But thrown into every few levels is a boss fight. This first boss took me longer than I had wanted to figure out how to beat it, and do exactly that. Part of this boss fight, which annoyed me, was that it took 5 hits to beat him. Usually I would expect 3 like many other games. That being said, that isn't really a big complaint at all. It's just that since all these negative parts of the game got to me and built up so much that every little detail would piss me off. With all the major complaints out of the way, let me tell you about the parts I actually enjoyed. The idle animation. It's really fun. At first Bubsy will just stand there tapping his foot, waiting to move. Then he looks back at you, waiting for you to move him. Then after enough time, he starts messing with your TV settings. It's unique and really fun to watch. That's it though. That's all I liked. As you can probably guess, I'm not the only person who didn't like this game. It's notoriously bad, no matter who you ask. Though after all that, I can say I gave Bubsy 3D a real effort. And even though I've seen Jontron's videos on the Bubsy franchise, I truly gave every Bubsy game the benefit of the doubt when going into each one, hoping that they wouldn't be as bad as they were said to be. But even positive thinking and a fair chance, they all failed me. But even now, I'm probably giving it a higher rating than it deserves.
But I'm gonna say that Bubsy 3D gets a 4.5.
Now I'm glad to say that I've gotten this game out of the way, and hopefully I won't find any game that I give a lower rating to, because that game will have to be especially terrible to get less than what I've given Bubsy 3D. Well, that's all I have for now. See you next time.